Okay. Good evening, everyone. I can recognize some faces that I know. Some of you came with me to Bordeaux a few years ago, and I'm very happy now tonight to present Alsace, which is another beautiful region of France. So we will start with a PowerPoint to illustrate with pictures and text what I prepare for you to introduce this region. Just for me to introduce myself, some of you know me, but I'm a travel agent here, voyage designer, and I work between France and the States. I live in Veronique when I'm here in the States, or I live in Arcachon next to Bordeaux, another wine region of France. But I'm used to go to Alsace, and I spent a few years in Alsace, and I go to Alsace every year. So I'm very happy to start this PowerPoint and introduce you this region. If we can just start, yes. Okay, so this is just a very short presentation of myself and why I like to speak about Alsace. Alsace, as I told you, I go to Alsace every year, and for Christmas time, I will be in this region. So I'm leaving next week. And Alsace, I'm happy for you to read these few lines about the history of Alsace, which is a very special region in France because it's a region who was German and French and German and French. So it's a beautiful region and very, very interesting about the history. So you can read this text, I guess you did, and we will move on to next flight. Next, okay. So I want just you to.
Yes, just a second. I'm just admitting someone in here. I had to stop sharing the presentation, but I will go back to it now that the person is here with us. Sorry about this.
Okay, no problem. We went to live in Alsace. It was in 1990, so a long time ago, but it was very historical time for the world because it was just when the wall of Berlin was destroyed. And then it was very important for Alsace, the Alsace region as well, this part of the history. And so you can see where is Alsace. Why I'm telling that, because Alsace is next to Germany. And that's why the history of Alsace was divided between France and Germany. So we can go to the next. Okay. And you see where is Strasbourg. So Strasbourg is the capital of Alsace, and it's not too. It's about 2 hours and a half from Paris, so it's very quick. More than it's better to go by train. Compare. Someone asked me last time, how do you go to Alsace and to Strasbourg? The best from New York is to fly to Paris and then catch a train 2 hours to go to Strasbourg. So this is Alsace. The geography of Alsace, as you can see, it's from the north to the south. It's with 3 main cities. And tonight we will speak about at least 2, Strasbourg and Colmar. So Strasbourg, which is the historic capital of Alsace, as you can read on this screen, has a very big history, and it's very well explained here. So I prefer you to read this. As you may know, that Alsace came back to France at the end of the Second World War, which is not so far away. And I just have a small anecdote, but when we came to live in Alsace, we rented a house in a small village, and the owner of the house was French, Alsatian French. And he was a little boy, not a little boy, he was a teenager when the war started. And he said that it was very difficult for them to become again German. And when he was in the street with his friends, he remembered that he wanted to speak French, but this was not allowed. So each time they were in the street in Strasbourg and they met German soldiers, it was a very it was so much forbidden to speak French that they had to be very careful and speak very slowly and very loudly, not too much noise. They were very frightened to meet German soldiers at that time. So about Strasbourg, Strasbourg is really a beautiful city. I think it's the second city visited in France after Paris. And I will speak tonight about four main subjects: the European Parliament, the Cathedral, the Petite France, and the Christmas market, because it's the end of the year and this is the time of the Christmas markets. So Strasbourg, as one of the seat of the European Parliament, it's in a very lovely district of Strasbourg, and we can have tour the European Parliament if we want to, and it's very, very interesting. So then we have the cathedral. We can just go to next slide. Yes. So here is a Strasbourg overview. It's, as you can see, a beautiful city, and the cathedral, which is a huge church, is really at the center of the city. Here are all the small houses with different colors in the narrow street of the old Strasbourg. It's absolutely beautiful. So this is really Alsace. And here is always Strasbourg with cathedral and the river Lille. And as you know, Strasbourg is at the border of Germany, separate by the big river Le Rhin. So it's very easy to cross the border. So here is the Parliament, European Parliament, which is a very modern building, but a beautiful building, I can say, and in the nice district. And it's a lot of decision for Europe are taken there, and you can visit and even sometimes assist to discussion. So just yeah. So here is a cathedral, a huge one. I think it has been the highest cathedral in the world for a long time. And then this cathedral, we will move on to the next slide to see the.
I'm sorry about that again. It's because some guests are joining us and I cannot share and at the same time let people in. I'm so sorry about this.
No problem.
Веронике рассказывать про Страсбург.
So here is in the text some dates about this cathedral and some facts. And I can tell you that it's a very impressive cathedral because it has been built in the Middle Age city. So the streets are very narrow, and then you discover this cathedral, which is huge. And I'm always, I have always a big impression when I'm just in front of this cathedral. It's incredible. So you can see here the houses next to the cathedral with what we call le colombage, and very nice architecture from the Middle Age. And they are just next to the cathedral. And these are details about the cathedral. Religious detail. And inside. So this is a very interesting part of the cathedral. It's, as you can see, called the Astronomical Clock. And every hours you have small personage at the top of the clock, as you can see, and it moves around and it's going we can see that from outside as well. So every hour, it's a huge crowd of people standing by the cathedral to see that. And it's an incredible system. These are some details of the clock. So then we have in Strasbourg, one other district that I have selected. It's La Petite France. La Petite France is a small district, very old district in Strasbourg, but very famous. And it's has been selected by UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it's really, really, you cannot miss this. You have to go. It's a very high, it's a highlight for this city. And it's absolutely very lovely, charming. This is the Petite France. So with the different houses and the river, then you can even go by, of course, boat on the river, and you have tours of the city on the river. For winter time, at summertime, it's really a very lovely part of the city. It's full of small restaurants, small shops, and it's in summertime, it's very crowded, but at Christmas time, it's very crowded as well. And Christmas time in Strasbourg, they started last week, the Christmas market. And so we have some samples of the little cabins that we have for the Christmas market. And it's all over the city. Here it's on a small square, but then we have that as well on the big square, which is Place Kléber, which is the central square of Strasbourg, huge square. And with Sapin de Noël, it's very, very lovely, very lively as well. So thanks to these pictures, you can see as well if you could just come back to the other one, Rachel, please. Yes, then you can see the architecture of Strasbourg and where is the cathedral. And so when you are on this big square, and then the Christmas market is all over the small streets of Strasbourg, then you enter at the end right of the square, and you go to the cathedral, and it's very, very lively and full of people with shopping for Christmas, but then staying for eating or drinking. It's very lovely. So here this is, of course, you have the snow during the winter, so it's icy. It's not too much, a little bit icy, but a lot of snow, so it's beautiful. And all the lights. So this is it's a lot of pictures about the Christmas market, but it's the time of it's the season of the Christmas market. That's why you see you have some of them at the foot of the cathedral, and you can see the difference of the dimension. I mean, we are so small compared to the cathedral, which is absolutely huge. And with this Christmas market, we have all the food, the drinks, and the small handicraft made by the Alsatian people. So, and then I'm just moving off to Konm, and at summertime, then we will come back to the Christmas time. But this is the second city I have selected in Alsace. The two most known cities are Strasbourg and Konm, about the big cities. And as you can see in the text, it's called also the Little Venice because of the rivers crossing the small city. And the houses are from Middle Age, and it's very old but beautiful city. I have selected two famous people of Alsace. The first one is Hansi. Written on your text, you can see why Hansi is famous. He was drawing critics against the German during the war. So he illustrated and he wrote a lot of books. And nowadays, these books are very expensive and very rare to be found, but very famous. And on to the other slides, you will see the style of Hansi. Here you have his history, and then he draws everything about Alsace, always the same style. So it's very easy to recognize that it's coming from Hansi. But you can see on that one that it's children laughing about a German soldier, because of course they were so, it was so difficult for the children to live at that time that Hansi, that was his way to express himself. Hansi, my village. So everything is about Alsace and Alsatian people. It's very lovely. So this is one of the famous, and the other one, I think we will move to the other one. I think you know him even better. It's Bartoldi, and Bartoldi, maybe you know, is very famous because he made the Statue of Liberty with Monsieur Eiffel. Mr. Eiffel, who built the Eiffel Tower, helped to consolidate the statue inside, and Bartoldi made the sculpture outside. So here is Bartoldi, and these two people are from Colmar, the two famous people. So when you go to Colmar, you can visit the museum on Bartoldi and the Statue of Liberty. And in Colmar, you also have a very famous museum with one piece. I mean, a lot of things inside the museum, but one piece is very, very famous in the world, and it's a retable. So you will see the retable on next slide, and it's people sometimes are coming to this museum until Linden only for that retable that you see now, and it's made in wood, and it was made by monks. So now we just go to the market again, to the Christmas market in Colmar, which is also a big market, very famous. And as you can see on the pictures, very lovely. And even if you go every year, as I do, it's always a pleasure to go. And last time we went with American friends, and I don't know how to say in English, but ils étaient émerveillés. They were so, vraiment, c'était a big surprise for them. So you can see all the stands and whatever is done, the handicraft and the food, the special food from Alsace. So maybe some of you know that. The name is choucroute. It's very, very good. It's not very special for Christmas time, but I wanted to show what is special in Alsace about the food. So choucroute, and then you have Flammenküche. It's some kind of, I would say, quiche, but it's not really quiche, and it's with onion and a little bit meat, and it's very good. Very special. And le foie gras. This, we have that at Christmas time, the bretzel. and all the small biscuits with some figure. It's very lovely. This is really what we have every time at Christmas. The Kuglof also, and I don't know how you say it. It's a warm, it's wine but warm, with orange and some cannelle. It's special for Christmas, and it's nice to warm outside with this in the hands. So this is a wine, and this is the white wine. And I think you had a wine tasting not a long time ago with an expert from Alsace, and we just add this where this wine was coming from and the history of the family after this glass of wine, which is very interesting. So we can maybe move to this history. This is a lovely village where this family is coming from. This village is Ricquevire in Alsace. We are not talking about this today because we just wanted to focus on Strasbourg and Konm, but of course Alsace is surprising with all these small villages everywhere, and with the vineyards around. And you can have wine in all these villages. And last time you had tasting with HUGEL family, and this wine coming from Ricquevire. Ricquevire is, for myself, the nicest village in Alsace. It's absolutely lovely, pretty, and of course to visit. But this will be a part of another discovery of Alsace. I think we have this for next year. So this is a story of the HUGEL family. And when you are reading this, I can tell you that you have wine everywhere in Alsace, very good wine. So you have to go to Alsace for this too. In this text, you can see the two famous maybe name that you may know from Alsatian wine. One is a Riesling.
Rachel?
Yes.
Rachel and Veronique, do you guys want to move on to the wine thing? If we do, then we should change over and talk about the wine itself. Is that what?
Yeah, that makes sense.
D'accord. So I'm gonna take over then.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna go to my screen. Okay, thank you, Veronique, for this.
I just would like to add before we move to the wine that some of you know me, and as I told you, we made a tour to Bordeaux, and I would be very happy to build a tour to Alsace and to discover more, and of course wine, but all the villages. So then I think we will meet next year to have a longer presentation and a different presentation in Alsace. So today I'm over. And I thank you very much for being here tonight. And thank you, Ghassan, to introduce about the wine. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Veronique.
Merci, Véronique.
No.
Est-ce que, alors, avant que Ghassan commence, je voulais simplement demander si quelqu'un avait des questions pour Véronique. Parce que je vois qu'on avait une question de Gloria, par exemple, dans le chat, qui disait, do you happen to know where is the village of Hatmat in relation to Strasbourg? Véronique, does it ring a bell? Le village de Hatmat.
No, I'm sorry.
No?
No. I'm sorry not to be able to answer to that question.
J'ai une question pour Véronique. Quelles sont les choses artisanales de Strasbourg? On a vu quelque chose, mais qu'est-ce qu'il y a de cette région?
De cette région, alors il y a plutôt il y a de la boisson qui est de la bière qui se fait dans cette région, mais sinon en objet, vraiment objet, il y a des petits objets de bois. Il y a par exemple le symbole de l'Alsace qui est la cigogne. Donc ça, vous m'entendez parce que je vous entends. Do I speak French?
On t'entend très bien, Véronique,
Ah,
pas
ok.
de problème.
Donc, il y a la cigogne qui est le symbole de l'Alsace. Donc, ça, on en voit beaucoup qui sont faites en bois à Strasbourg, mais c'est aussi dans toute l'Alsace. Je pourrais dire qu'il n'y a pas un objet très spécial à Strasbourg, mais dans l'Alsace, alors il y a de la porcelaine qui était faite à Strasbourg aussi. Mais en Alsace même, il y a ce qui est fameux aussi, ce sont les tissus, par exemple. Il y a de très jolis tissus faits en Alsace pour la décoration.
Du
des
coton
tissus,
ou de la soie ou...
Du coton, c'est en coton et c'est pour la décoration surtout de la maison. Il y a dans le sud de l'Alsace un très joli village qui s'appelle Ribeauvillé. On en parlera la prochaine fois où il y a des tissus. Mulhouse, il y a le musée du textile à Mulhouse. Donc, il y a des particularités, mais à Strasbourg même, il n'y a pas vraiment quelque chose de très qui ressort comme particularité. Mais en Alsace, sinon, il y a beaucoup d'artisanat, comme je viens de dire.
Okay, merci.
Yeah, just to add to what Veronique was saying, I think one of the famous, the usual things we find on Christmas markets are also going to be wooden toys and things like that in general. That's going to be very traditional in Alsace. And so fabrics, as Veronique was saying, I'm just repeating in English for people who might not have understood the French.
Sorry, yes.
And so Veronique was talking about cigogne. I'm not sure what's the name for cigogne in English. It's a bird that has their nest on top of chimneys usually, right?
Stork.
Stork? Okay.
S-O-R-K.
Okay, stork. I've learned something tonight. So sorry about that. Anyway, so I will let Ghassan carry on, but there was just one last question from Margarita before that. She was asking how much time should people allocate to see the region of Alsace?
The minimum it's 3 days. And the good one is a week, a small week. It's so much to see that a week is perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you say 3 days, I think I would say at least 4 or 5 days to see really the bare minimum. But I agree with you. 1 week is probably ideal to see everything.
Because we haven't talked about all the castles, all the small villages, all the vineyards. It's incredible. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just too much to see to cram this into 3 days, 4 days even is really short.
And it's beautiful at every season, winter, fall, summer, spring, absolutely every season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you so much, Veronique. And so we're looking forward to hearing more about Alsace next time when we have another presentation with you that talks about more of the region. But I think now Ghassan is going to tell us a bit more about the wine that you started introducing. And so for all of you, if you have your wine, you can start serving yourself now, but I will let Ghassan explain everything about it.
Well, I mean, we're just going to discover it together. I'm not sure I have a lot of advance on you guys. Just one more word before we jump into the wine on Mulhouse. For the ones who care about these things, it is the home of Bugatti. So let's not forget, you know, for some of us, this is important. So this is just a side note. Back at the time, it was called Marché because he founded the company during the German time at the turn of the century. Anyway, here we are, we're talking about wine. Alsace has been, it's funny, every time we speak about a region in France, we go back to the Romans and we saw they've been making wines since the Romans. Well, it is the case here. We're talking over 2,000 years, and the proximity to the Rhine, like the Rhone region and the river, was a huge enabler for exporting the wine all over Europe back in those days and beyond, right now. So Alsace has been making wine, and Alsace has been associated with wine for a long time, and it's got some really old-standing families. The HUGEL is one of those families. They started their business in 1639, and so to the day when Germany and France declared war in 1939, they were sitting at home celebrating their 300th anniversary, and they kind of went on and said, okay, here we go again, because they had been through the back and forth of 1870 and 1914, and they had changed nationality 4 times and languages, and so there was a little bit of that, a mix of that sort of resignation, if you want, because they've seen it before, and not this, ferocious resistance you'd seen in other parts of France, but at the same time, because they were growing up German and French. So there was this sort of, but at the same time, they did find ways to, the 2 sons had to be conscripted by the German army, but the father disappeared. He refused to join the Nazi party, and he was hiding actually in Konm for 4 years until they told him it was safe to come out when the Germans left. And there's a couple of other anecdotes, like the HUGEL family ended up calling one of their pigs Adolf, and even the Germans were too embarrassed to actually make a big deal of it. And that was one of those subtle things people were able to do along the way. But at the end of the day, this is about wine. So let's talk a little bit about this wine. Now, I have some notes here, and I think they were also in the presentation. But the wine is an interesting thing in many ways. But in France, wine during the war, wine became another big issue during the Second World War, because the Germans loved French wine, and they tried everywhere they could. You have 3 major battlefields on the wine front, if you want, which were Bordeaux, Burgundy, and the Loire Valley. And the 4th one, which is probably the biggest of them all, was Champagne, where there was just, and I have a book I can recommend to everybody later if people are interested in the weaving of the war and the wine in France during the Second World War. It's really a fascinating book. But in Alsace, it was also an issue, because the Germans were trying to put their hands on any wine they could. And even as they were leaving, when they were leaving France, they loaded all the wine they could on a bunch of planes, hoping to fly them back to Berlin, until they realized they didn't have enough fuel. So the wines stayed. And then another anecdote on this, as they had the counterattack, coming back from Germany, and they were fighting around Riquier and some of the other villages. The villagers caught fire, and there was no water left because the reservoirs had been bombed as well. So the villagers were able to use some of their cheaper, low quality, low alcohol wine to help extinguish the fire. Now, don't try that at home, because I hope you have better wine than that. But still, I think it did work in that case. And they, throughout the war, they managed one way or another to also sell the Germans whatever cheap, low quality wine they had, changing labels and changing the bottles just to make them believe that they were selling them, nice wine. But that's, again, that book is very interesting and very fun to read along those lines. The 4 major varietals in Alsace are Gewurztraminer and Riesling, which I'm sure everybody's heard of. And then you've got Pinot Noir, which is sort of interesting, and Pinot Gris, which, no. And so the ones we've probably heard the most of are the first two, you know, the Riesling and Gewurztraminer, which are white wines. And tonight we're tasting a Gewurztraminer together. This is not a fancy wine. This is a HUGEL sort of entry level. They call it the classic. It's made with some of grapes, some of their properties, but some grapes that they buy from around them, where they actually participate in how these grapes are grown and managed. So they do have a say in how the wine is made all the way from the beginning. Now the Gewurztraminer is a red grape. This is the other thing that I think people don't know necessarily. It's a light red, almost pink colored grape, but you know the pulp of it is white, and so that's what you're gonna get in this wine. And it's always been known for being extremely aromatic, with exotic, you know, fruit flavors, and then, but at the same time, it manages to remain dry, even though it's got that fruitiness, and as a result, it goes with a wide variety of food. You know, I mean, with the foie gras that Veronique was talking about, with choucroute as well, with the white cabbage, you know, in the choucroute. It goes with pork. It goes with game. It goes with oysters, as Francois and Jean-Pierre can confirm after many experiments. You know that it does really go well with oysters. And so, but tonight, I don't know what you're gonna have at home, but I think even on its own, it's pretty interesting. Let's just take a taste, and I don't know if people have any comments. On the nose, you can tell already, and the one thing that strikes everybody, I think, is the lychee aroma that just jumps right out of the glass, which is actually one thing that a lot of people don't like about this wine. So it is controversial, but it's natural. That's just the way it is. And then in the mouth, it is also the taste carries on, you know, with that sort of, it's more fruit, a little bit of that flowery, I'm not sure what kind of flower, you know, but there's a little bit of flower note also when it goes into your mouth. But at the same time, it's not a very high acidity wine. I mean, there's enough acidity to go with food, but it's not something that, you know, catches you. And the finish is not super long. And it could be, again, that this is not, you know, the top quality wine. This is more of an entry level, you know, as you guys bought the bottle, it was between $20 and $25. So that's a nice entry level wine. And then you get that, you get this sort of the fruit, the exotic fruit, you get the flower, you get a little bit of sweetness, not too much. I don't think this is, there are Gewurztraminers that are made that are, they're called noble grains that are really late, not, you know, they really have botrytis in them, and they are on the sweeter side. And there is also late harvest Gewurztraminer, they call also vendange tardive, that is very expensive because you have to get it just right, you know, before. Alsace as a whole is a late ripening region because it's pretty far north. So, you know, it's not as hot, and there's not, it's also the lowest rain wine region in France, which is kind of something that, again, it's good to know in terms of from a wine growing point of view, because the Vosges Mountains, you know, protected on the east side from the rain coming from the Atlantic. And then, but sometimes you have rain, of course you have frost, you have hail. I mean, there's a lot of accidents waiting to happen, and it's a challenging environment. And if you, on top of that, want to wait for a late harvest, then you really have to get it absolutely right. And the, you know, and the winemakers who make that, then they really are going to end up with an expensive wine. So it is, but that wine is dry, the late harvest wine, not the sweet type. So there's all sorts of flavors, even with the Gewurztraminer. Same thing with the Riesling. One thing I wanted to make a note of, because I think it is worth noting, is the silly glasses that, for whatever reason, I've tried to do some research. That's called the Alsace. It's an Alsatian wine glass. Now, two things about this. A, the really small cup and B, obviously the long colored stem. Now, you know, there is really no, today everybody's moving away from this. So these are more traditional, the kind of things you find in your homes. And it goes to, maybe there's a couple of reasons for that. Some of the stuff ascribes the shape of the bowl to the fact that this kind of bowl, when you drink, puts the sweetness right on your tongue, and it allows you to taste this first. Now, maybe it's true. I don't know if anybody who has this glass can try that and see if that is true. But at the same time, you know, the color of I think the color is a nice touch because it's a very light wine. So it doesn't really kind of pollute the color of the wine, but it gives it some interesting, you know, reflection, which doesn't really, it's not like you're going to ruin the color of the wine. It's not like some, you know, red wine where you really want to look at all the different subtleties about it. So the color of the stem doesn't really bother me. But I do think it does seem that more recently people are moving away from these guys. And I do think this whole phenomenon of having nicer wine glasses, it is really a recent phenomenon, like purpose built. You go back 100 years, 150 years, I don't think people had the wine glasses we have today. They had the nice goblets that they were really made with really fine glass and had gold on them or not. And the finer glasses were really just nice pieces of glass rather than form follows function, which is happening more and more today as people are getting into really tasting different wines in different ways and talking about them and developing this whole industry about wine tasting and wine enjoyment. Anyway, I don't know if people have comments on the wine itself or questions or, you know, additions or anything like that. So I'm going to leave it to the floor. Should you have, I mean, you have the chat.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat. I don't see any specific questions in the chat, except for one person was asking if you could give the title of the book you were talking about. If you can give it again. We will be sending it by email anyway, so that everyone can.
I'm glad you are asking. Can you see that?
Yeah, Wine and War. Mm-hmm.
It is written in English. It's an English book. I mean, it's an American book. It's not American. Yeah, it's not translated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we will be sending the reference by email for anyone who's interested. And Veronique is also asking if it's mainly white or red wine.
What?
From the Maison HUGEL. But maybe Veronique, you can ask your question yourself.
They make both, but I think that the white is like the overwhelming. You know, they have several types of Rieslings and Gewurztraminers and Pinot Gris. Actually, I'm not sure they make much red, but if they do, it'd be very little.
Yeah. Pardon, François, what are you saying?
They make also some other white wines like Tokaj and Sylvaner. And Tokaj is really a sweet wine, you know, which is started off in Hungary. But actually, I don't know if they make a red wine. It's a good question. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen one.
Yeah, I don't know many red wines from Alsace, but I'm not a specialist from this region. I know mostly the Riesling wines and as you were saying, the Vendange Tardive, which I think tends to be more like white wine, but I'm not an expert myself, so I wouldn't know. Veronique, maybe you know more about this, about the red wine production in Alsace?
No, really not. That's why I was asking.
Uh-huh.
I had just to know the details, but I know more white again, like you. Mm-hmm.
So I think, so for people who have been trying the wine tonight with Ghassan at the same time, what do you think of the wine? What do you feel about the taste? Because Ghassan was saying it tastes of lychee a little bit, right?
Yes.
Very true.
I don't know if many people can tell us what they thought about it, but maybe they've already finished drinking it and they don't have anything to compare it to. But I wanted to ask you, Ghassan, compared to Riesling wine, is it sweeter or is it drier?
I think it's not it's almost like a different question. It's a multivariable thing because with Gewurztraminer you can have sweet and dry. Gewurztraminer, and this is more on the dry side. It's not very sweet. But if you do go with the Grand Noble, like the HUGEL make one, it will be more sweet, like a sweet one. Same thing with Riesling. You have dry Riesling and you have really sweet Riesling. I think it's just at the end of the day, it's just a different grape that has different flavors, like the lychee and the exotic fruit, as opposed to which one is sweeter than the other, because both of them come in sweet and dry. That's my understanding, but this is one area I really don't know much about at all. But I know this is a multivariable.
Yeah.
You know, you can have dry Riesling or sweet Gewurztraminer or the other way around.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so because Veronique was talking about earlier about the special food of Alsace, and I know you've already said something about food, but you know, the special desserts from Alsace and like things like sweet dishes from Alsace, would they be paired well with this kind of wine, or would they not match?
I think I would go with a sweeter wine, maybe like a sweeter, a little bit less fruity, more just on the like kind of Tokai or a sweet Riesling that would just sort of not clash, you know, with this with a dessert. In a way. I mean that would be my suggestion. But.
Yeah, because I was thinking again about something that Veronique was showing in her presentation, which was the mulled wine with the cinnamon and things like that. I think those kind of wines would be better with some of the Alsatian desserts or the specific Christmas ones. But again, I'm not a specialist about Alsace wines.
I think mulled wine, the thing with mulled wine is you can make it with anything.
Yeah.
It's not very fancy because it's like, it's a waste. But yeah, I mean.
And I have a question for Veronique. I'm not sure if she knows the answer, but Veronique, since you were mentioning mulled wine earlier, you know, le vin chaud avec la cannelle, etc., cinnamon and spices in general. What I was wondering is it very different from the mulled wine made in Germany? Is there a specific version in Alsace, or is it just similar to what you would find in Germany, Switzerland, and other countries?
For what I know, and I have tasted, for me it's the same because it's all the different origin. I mean the same origin, so it's the same. So it's not so much different. Yeah. But it's really this kind of wine is we can only find that in the east part of France or the northern part of Europe. But we don't have that in the south of France, so it's very special and it's very, very nice. Very
yes,
good.
for sure.
It's popular in England too.
In England?
I know that from my daughter. Yeah, you know, it's a cold weather type of thing. Right?
Yeah, it's cold weather. That's what I'm talking about. It's a north part of Europe. Yes, it's good. But it's a very good tradition for Christmas time and the end of the year. It's very lovely.
Yeah.
Very good.
The reason why I was asking you again is also because I've heard that the Christmas market in Strasbourg is the oldest in Europe. So I was wondering if it was invented in Strasbourg originally and then went to other parts of Europe, or if it was something that appeared later on. And I personally don't know, so I would be interested in finding out more about that. But
I will try to find out for next time, because yes, it's a very interesting question, because I lived as well in Sweden, and in Sweden we had this kind of wine. But where is it coming from? That's a good question for next time.
So if anyone else has questions, you can either type the questions in the chat, or you can also unmute yourself and you can ask your question directly to either Veronique or to Ghassan if you would like to learn more about the Alsace and Christmas traditions in Alsace, or if you want to learn more about the wines that Ghassan has presented. Any questions? Don't be shy.
Boy, people are like ready for dinner. I think we're just keeping them away from dinner.
Maybe.
So if everyone wants to just say goodbye for now, I wanted to share a couple more photos that Veronique had prepared for her presentation that are, I think, beautiful. It's this picture here, where you see some of the Christmas cookies that they make in Alsace, because again, they're very specific from that region, where they have a mix of spices and other things, and that are very typical of Alsace. Of course, you find them in other parts of Europe, but for France, as Veronique was saying, it's very special. And these beautiful Christmas lights that you can see in places like Strasbourg and Colmar, because here again, I agree with Veronique, this is not something you find in the south of France or in places like where I come from in the southwest. You don't see this kind of decorations at all, not with so much lights and so many decorations. So it's very festive. And as Veronique was saying, it's very magical. I think visiting the Christmas markets in Colmar and Strasbourg at least once is very, very interesting, because it's really unique when it comes to French markets.
Absolutely, I agree. And I hope to go next year with some of you.
Okay, so bye everyone. Thank you for coming and thank you for joining us tonight.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ghassan. Thank you, Veronique.
Merci
Au revoir.
Ghassan, merci Véronique.
Thank
Salut,
you,
merci beaucoup.
everyone.
Salut.
Merci.
Merci.
Au revoir.
Au
Merci
revoir.
à tous. Au revoir.
Bye.
Merci pour la présentation.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Joyeux Noël, tout le monde.
Yes.
Joyeux Noël.
Merci,
Joyeux
Rachel.
Noël à
Merci.
vous aussi.
Merci, au revoir.
Merci.